So what I have for you today is a quick little run through of how to kind of check your computer and take a look at it to see if it is running slow. So a lot of people have, or a lot of the general public have issues with their computers, most of which is diagnostics, things of that nature. Of course, most people, especially in the business of IT, know how to work with their computers, know how to check them with their computers. But if you don't understand the simple concepts of memory, Windows, memory consumption, things of that nature, you can run the risk of opening up too many windows, opening up too many programs, or having things run in the background that you don't need. So let's take a look and see what we have. So for a simple speed check, a lot of things you can do simply run off of Task Manager. There's really no need to go into any in-depth software, running anything to try to say, oh, my computer's running slow. Most things you do with your computer you can check just through Task Manager to see what you have going on. So the first thing you always need to check is you need to check the programs that boot on startup. A lot of these programs that you have set when you install them, things like Skype, most of the Apple software like the Apple Web Store, Apple upgrades that you can do with your iPod, things of that nature. Products like Steam, a gaming software that you can get, Twitch, things of that nature. A lot of these applications are set to boot on startup. If you don't change their settings, they're always going to do it. I have a laptop that I have in my room that has the Apple software for the Apple Store. It just boots. It wants to always try to run an upgrade on it. And it's just, it slows the computer down because certain programs expend so much memory to use, so it takes that much longer for your computer to run. And if they're still running in the background and you don't even notice, just because a lot of the application information that you can have on the bottom of your screen that shows you all your different apps on your toolbar on the bottom, sometimes you won't notice that it's underlined depending on, of course, your device, because Apple products are a little different. There's also programs that run in the background, things that you can minimize and they continue to do things like Skype, things like most of your internet browser, things like Twitch. You can minimize these screens and whatever video, whatever audio, whatever you have had running on these particular programs, they will continue to run throughout the use of it. They're not going to stop just because you turn the program off. They're not turn the program off. They're not going to stop because you minimize the program. They're just going to keep going. So they're continuing to run in the background, which if you start to do more and more things and you don't shut these programs off, they're just going to keep going. They're going to keep eating away at your memory, and your computer's just going to get slower and slower until you start to shut some of these programs off. And with most machines that you get nowadays, that really doesn't become an issue, especially if you just have a whole bunch of internet browser windows opened up, unless you just have a really crappy internet. Outside of that, the last thing to really look for is applications that don't auto-close. And this particular feature I'm speaking of is you have, particularly one of the softwares that I know this is with is Twitch. You can click the X button at the top of the software, but instead of actually turning the software off, it will cut off any audio, any visual feed for the most part, but it will keep the application running. So for particularly with the software known as Twitch, you have to actually go to your taskbar or to your application that you have on your screen, and you have to manually stop the software, or you can just go to Task Manager and turn it off. Those are a few extra steps you can take, but it ensures the program is turned off, so it ensures that it's not continuously eating away at your memory and it's not another thing you have running. So I have a few screenshots here, particularly one of Task Manager. As you can see, it's showing what I have running, particularly Camtasia, Google Chrome, softwares that I have opened up on my desktop. The next one I have is kind of the visual image inside of Task Manager. It shows you all the applications that you have turned on and running, and all the background processes. Now, most of the background processes that you have running on your computer, those are things you don't want to disable. Those are things you don't even want to mess with unless you know what you're doing, because a lot of these are mainstay softwares and mainstay programs that are allowing your computer to operate, process, keep itself heated, keep its other softwares running, things that are very vital to the makeup of your PC. The last thing I have up here is actually the startup window. The startup window under Task Manager shows you every single application that has the ability to run on startup and the impact the software has to your startup. So you can see particularly on here if it's, depending on your visual prospects, you can see Skype, Slack, Steam, which is the bootstrap of the Steam client, and of course Twitch. A lot of these, most of the companies, depending on the software, they will state that the startup impact is none just because it's initiating the software, but really it depends on your PC's capability to handle programs. There's a lot of computers nowadays that, even though the impact of some of these softwares is slim to none, it's actually a lot more than you think it is. I've had customers come in with PCs and they have Skype, they have Slack, they have not Twitch, but they have like different, like Outlook, and I think it is Notes. They have that set to start when they boot up the computer, and depending on just how old the computer and how well the computer manages those softwares, it could take anywhere from 5, maybe 10 minutes, sometimes mostly 5 minutes for the computer to kind of get past this startup process. And for most people, nowadays, people don't like waiting. It's a shame, but that's the way most people like their computers. The next thing we have is program info. So the main thing you need to look for when you're looking at your program info, and these are kind of highlights, is screens open. Now you might think this is me pointing towards using your web browser. That's not really the case here. A lot of the times there are softwares such as Camtasia, there are softwares such as Word and other things like that, where when you start up the program, it might open up multiple windows. For instance, with Microsoft Word, if you shut the program down completely without continuing to save your work or doing things of that nature, when you reopen up the software, it has a memory in the software to where it attempts to reopen any Word documents you have had open during its last shutdown phase. I've had several scenarios where I've opened up my Microsoft Word and I just get like 3 or 4 Word documents try to open up at once, and that just hard crashes. Not hard crashes, but that hard slows down computers if they can't manage Word, because Word is a very hefty software. Of course, just going through, it's just how much memory each of the softwares use when you actually run the program. Things like CAD software, house design software, very high-level business software, you need a lot more memory to run these programs. I would never recommend you get any computer smaller than 6 gigabytes of memory to run some of this software. But it's always something to look into, because a lot of people, when they buy a computer, they think of its utility use before they think of, well, I just want to put this program on there. Most people, when they go to a store and they get a software, they completely ignore what their computer to handle, and they just want to get the software. They don't want to go out and spend $100, $500 to even upgrade the memory, let alone get a new computer. They just want what they have now to work with what they have already, or they want what they have now to work with what they want to get. They don't want to have to take any additional steps, and that can hurt your computer in the long run, especially if you just can't ever get the software to run. Software creators. Now this particular point is something that you need to look into, just because of the world we live in now. You can get a software online. You can have a software on your computer that you get from a friend, and these softwares might not be legitimate. You need to know when you have a software on your computer that is not a legitimate software, or it comes from a manufacturer that is of the, let's say, sketchy nature. A lot of customers come in and they get the software off of web pages during their downloads, and you never know what you're going to get when you download a software and use, unless you clearly pay attention to where it is. Or for instance, if you have an antivirus that's running on your computer that actually checks websites to ensure you that they're from a safe and secure HTTPS web page. So what will happen is you will get this software on your computer. It's something that you actually wanted to go out and get, but because you got it from a website that wasn't secure, or it's because you got it from a manufacturer that copied and redid the software, there can be other things that can come along with this software, and they can be programs that you might not ever see. And if you don't know the creators of some of these softwares, they probably don't need to be on your computer. And some of these softwares, you won't know it until it's too late, but they will boot up on startup if you've never checked your task manager or anything like that, and it just slowly degrades your boot up time. It slowly degrades the speed of your computer, and it can get to a point where you just have a virus on your computer, and from the start, you didn't even know. The last simple thing to do, and this is of course the point of the presentation, is speeding your computer up. The simplest way to speed up a computer, especially if the memory is the problem, is to just do a memory upgrade. This is a lot easier than it sounds, or it sounds easy but it's hard to do. And the difficulty of this just really depends on the computer you have. If you have a stock computer, you probably need to get a professional to do it, because most stock computers that you buy in the store, all the components are smashed inside the PC or inside the laptop. And if you try to get someone who doesn't have training to do this, you're probably going to end up with a messed up computer. Managing your applications. Be aware of how many applications you have opened up and how many applications you actively need to use at a time, and what those applications are actually doing for you when you run them. If you're typing up a Word document, more often than not, there's some notes you need to look at, or there's a web page you're pulling references from, and that's fine. But if you have like Steam opened up in the background, for instance, if you have Twitch and all this other stuff running while you're trying to run your Word software, there's a chance it's probably going to slow down. You're going to start typing keystrokes, and it's going to miss keystrokes, or it's going to pause and have a delay. And with most people, when they start typing, they get to a point and they look up to check their typing to see if they have any errors or mistakes. And if they look up and they're looking up at a blank screen, for instance, and they type like 20 words a minute, they're probably going to be a little bit upset with the fact their computer hadn't caught all the words they typed in, because it's going to take a few more seconds for them, not for them, but for the computer to catch up with them, and it's not feasible. Modify your programs that start on boot up. That kind of goes along with what I was talking about earlier with just looking at your boot up settings. You can change it to where a lot of programs don't need to start on boot up. You can modify them to where they don't start on boot up due to either their high impact nature or just because you don't want them to start when you turn your computer on. Disable your unwanted programs. So if you ever go through your physical features inside of your computer to check for installed applications or programs, anything that you see that you don't actively use, that doesn't actively impact your life on your computer, or any programs you don't use from day-to-day life, get them off your computer, or turn them off, disable them, get them off your boot up, because if you're not ever going to use them at that point in time, there's no need to have them ever turned on unless you need them. And one of the easiest things you can do is just run a diagnostic scan on your PC. If you have any antivirus that exists on your computer, if you ever see that your computer is running extremely slow and you have a good working knowledge of electronics, and you kind of know that you have all your programs in a line, that you haven't installed anything that you shouldn't have, you're very aware of the internet as a whole and the way people work nowadays. Just running a simple malware scan on your computer, there's a chance you might find something that your antivirus can quarantine and get off your computer. And then you're not going through the whole hoopla of having to go to a technician to get it repaired. And that's money you get to save and not have to worry about. That's really the best way to look at most of this. So I hope this has been informative, and I hope you have a good day.